out there, all you rock and rollers. Welcome to the 93rd edition of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast with your host, me, the Wolf, Mac B, coming to you right now from Amsterdam, or Greater Amsterdam. Was living right off Abbey Road for a few years, though. Made it through COVID and loved being in London. I'm going to go back to spend some time there, but wanted to get out of London for a little while. Wanted to get into Europe. COVID kind of stopped all that for a while, so I'm just glad I can see a little bit more of Europe while I'm over here, while I'm not in North America. And that's where I'm coming from now. Of course, my partner in crime, co-host Gary Action Jackson, will be joining us from the East Coast here very shortly. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to our most recent episode, number 92, about Foxtrot by Genesis, turning 50. It's a really amazing album. And obviously, Steve Hackett, our friend and guest of the show on episode 87, that was a big album for him in the band. He plays Supper's Ready on his brand new live album and DVD, Genesis Revisited, Seconds Out Live Plus More. And on Friday, the 9th of September, he kicks off his UK tour, Foxtrot at 50, where he and his incredible band will do the Foxtrot album in its entirety, front to back, and that of course includes the 23-plus minute epic Supper's Ready, which ends the record. So for all you people in the UK who love Genesis or Steve Hackett, get out and see him on this tour. Pretty extensive tour. I think it's more than 20 dates, maybe 25 dates, something like that. And he will extend it into Europe in 2023, and we're hoping North America as well. So please check out that show. Check out episode 87 with our interview with Steve about the live album, the Seconds Out Live tour, and preparation for this one. Also have to mention that we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, a network of about 100 different podcasts of all genres of music. There's something in there for everybody. We always give shout outs to our rock friends who have been on our show or we've been on theirs before, which includes Paul Stevenson of Vintage Rock Pod and This Day Rocks, Tom and Zeus, the Kiss Kings of the Shout It Out Loud cast. You got Jay Scott on The Hook Rocks, and a brand new podcast coming out soon, Rock is Lit, hosted by our sister, Christy Alexander Hallberg. Can't wait to hear. She's got Susie Quattro coming up on one of her first shows, and you never know who else might be on her shows over time, so you may want to tune into that one, maybe subscribe if you want to hear from people you know, hint, hint, wink, wink. And I have to let you know that we are sponsored by the coolest podcast sponsor in the world. That's RareVinyl.com. Rare Vinyl has been in business for almost 40 years. They have over 250,000 items in stock, and they take incredible care to ensure that everything stays in pristine shape, whether it's when they receive it, when they put it on their website, or when they ship it off to you. You can also go to EIL.com. It's basically their sister site. But use the code PODCAST, P-O-D-C-A-S-T, for all your purchases. It'll save you 10%. They ship all over the world, so I don't care if you're in the United States or Uruguay, the United Kingdom, or down under in Australia. You find something you like, it's going to be in great shape. You can buy it from them, use the code podcast, save your 10%. It should probably knock off your shipping anyway, and get pristine, hard to find, rare vinyl items from rarevinyl.com, our amazing sponsor. Now this week, we return to one of our very, very, very favorite bands, and that's Rush. And those who follow the show know that Rush is one of my top 3 bands of all time. They're huge for Jackson. I really take credit for turning Jackson on to Rush when we were in college, mostly thanks to the double CD compilation Chronicle, which had a couple songs really off every album they did from the beginning all the way through 1990. And that kind of whetted his appetite for more. And then while we were together as roommates, they released Roll the Bones, and they did the Roll the Bones tour, which we camped out for and went to see both of our first Rush shows. And it was really important for me as far as that solidified them as one of my favorite bands of all time. I never missed a tour after that. Saw them on every tour, saw them 12 times overall. And this September is the 40th anniversary for one of their best albums and just a big turning point for them, right? It's an important point of time for them, and that's Signals. Now, it turns out September is actually a very big release month for Rush over the years, because it turns out that in 1975, they released Caress of Steel, which is almost no one's favorite Rush album and almost led to the end of the band, some might say. But also, A Farewell to Kings was released in 1977 on September the 1st. Mentioned Signals, which we're going to be talking about here today. Hold Your Fire in 1987, that was a September release. Roll the Bones, which I just mentioned, 1991, while we were freshmen at Rollins College, was released. Test for Echo, 1996. was big for them, but also their first live album, All the World's a Stage, September 29th, 1976, and the before-mentioned Chronicle, the double album, which really turned me and Jackson on big time to Rush, just gave us a flavor of all of their tunes and what we've been missing through the years. That was released September 4th, 1990. It has been a big part of our lives and influence on us ever since. Look, 1982 was an interesting time for Rush, okay? They'd just done Moving Pictures with Tom Sawyer, with Red Barchetta, with Witch Hunt and Limelight. Huge hit, still the biggest record they've ever done, multi-platinum in the US, Canada, and some other places around the world. Huge radio success with Tom Sawyer. Then they did the big tour, and then they wrapped up their second quadrant of the 70s and early 80s with the live album Exit, Stage Left. So now, what do? Well, Rush has never been one to sit on their laurels, and they didn't want to just make moving pictures too. So they wanted to find a new way to express themselves, take advantage of some of the technology and changes in music that were happening at the time, and mix that with their sound that they'd hewn over the last decade or so. And the result was Signals, which was very keyboard driven, laden with a lot of synths and new sounds, not only on the keyboard, but some drum parts as well. And it starts off with the brilliant Subdivisions, with that prodding, bassy, big, heavy keyboards, kind of industrial, changing the mood of what Rush would be. Kind of presented a bit of a challenge for guitarist Alex Lifeson, as he's used to being that kind of middle ground, and now the keyboard is suddenly taking up some of that space. But it's a transition they kind of worked throughout the 80s, and people have different opinions of Rush during the 80s. But I think they remained an incredible music trio. Yes, their sound changed a little bit given the times. But this album has an amazing theme set by lyricist and drummer Neil Peart. And it's about growing up. It's about what you face as a young man or young person, as a teenager in high school, really through adulthood and into death and beyond. And he's such a good writer. He's such a good lyricist. It's such a huge loss to the world, not just to Rush fans in the music world, but to the world in general when an artist and a light like Neil Peart is lost. And it's hard to believe it's already been, 2.5 years since we lost him. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive deep into Signals. It's an amazing Rush album. It was important for them at the time. Jackson and I probably didn't listen to it as much as we should have back in the day, but now it's absolutely one of our very favorites. And you can see as we rank that against the other Rush albums we've reviewed. So let's get to it, guys. We're talking Rush Signals on its 40th anniversary right here on The Wolf. I can't believe I'm so jazzed over this whole Nick Mason tour thing, Jackson.
It's amazing. It is amazing. When I read the information that was presented, I was floored.
Yeah, for our listeners, I don't know if we're really supposed to start doing it this far in advance, but I can't help it. And it's already on social media, so it's not like you don't know this. Pantheon Podcast, which is like our parent company, the network that we're a part of with 100 or so great music podcasts, we have formed a partnership with Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets. And we and our fellow podcasters are going to be at different stops along the tour where we'll be interacting with the band, giving you updates as they kind of get ready throughout the day, maybe do some live broadcasting, be at the show. Those with merch might be able to sell it and stuff like that. But the really cool part is, if you go to pantheonpodcast.com, you can click in there and click to win like front row seats to Nick Mason.
Yeah, that's when I read that. Yeah, I was like, okay, because we're going to be there, or people from Pantheon will be there. That's fun. Okay, I'm sure it'd be great to hear. But yeah, when I heard that people could win like VIP tickets, okay, that just ramped it up a whole nother area, because that's really cool. I mean, to not only to see the show, but to get to win this and to absolutely.
And at every show, all the way across the country. And you're like, Mistress Carrie's going to be at the Boston show. And I think Jay from the Hook Rocks is going to be at the Chicago show. And we're going to be, we're looking to be at the Indie show along with Music Buzz podcast, which has 3 hosts, one of whom is Hugh Syme. Hugh, of course, being the artist. He did so much great artwork over the years. He's really associated mostly with Rush, as he did most all of their concepts. Certainly from like 2112 on. He did the Whitesnake cover that we just did with Sonny Pooney a couple of shows back. Talented artists, obviously. Their show, Music Buzz, they are based in Indianapolis, so I think they're going to be there as well. But it's a cool way to promote, right? I mean, yes, radio stations are important. Podcasting is huge now, right? And so to have so cool, that they're sponsored the tour, and I'd like to think that we had a small role to play in getting that. Obviously, Peter and Christian, who are the gurus at Pantheon, negotiated this deal with Nick Mason's management. But they did tell us that after hearing our show, now they said that the management heard our show on me seeing them live at Royal Albert Hall and then us discussing it. They said they liked your all show. And I'm like, when you say their manager liked it? Nick Mason liked it?
Everybody?
Did Guy and Gary like it? Because they've got a great podcast, The Rock on Tours. So does that mean any of them will be on our show? We don't know all the details yet. We just know that you can go to pantheonpodcast.com, click on the link for Nick Mason. You can't miss it. And enter to win tickets. And go ahead and buy tickets, but then enter to win, and maybe you'll get upgraded. And then you'll have the opportunity to go on a show, one of the Pantheon podcast show, either somebody who is at the show that night, or you come on our show maybe. If you come to the indie show and say hi, we'd love to meet you. It's a pretty neat opportunity to see this incredible band, and you can hear what is our episode 75, I think it is, around there. Learn about my experience basically sitting on the stage at Royal Albert Hall. That's what it'll be like to be front row if you win. Great night. The band's amazing.
Can we talk about what you're going to win?
Yeah, go ahead.
You get a pair. Okay, so if you win the whole thing, you get a pair of front row tickets. You get a commemorative guitar pick shaped necklace carved down from a drum cymbal played by Nick Mason. Okay, that's a one of a kind deal.
That's fancy.
A selection of curated exclusive VIP merchandise, commemorative VIP laminate and lanyard, always cool to show your friends.
All right.
Crowd free shopping at a dedicated merchandise stand before the show. On-site perks such as priority check-in, VIP express lane into the venue for ease of entry, whenever possible, and a dedicated customer service line. And then, optional, you can be a guest on a Pantheon podcast.
How big is that?
That, to me, that's the big one.
To be on a show, yes, I know.
I mean, that's cool, but to be on the podcast, once in a lifetime.
Once in a lifetime. Or once a week if you're us. But it's going to be fun, and I'm just glad that we can go see a show together this year, because that was probably not going to happen. And, in the fact that I know we have a lot of listeners in Louisville, where I'm from, and in Ohio and Indiana, you get a chance, come see the show and come say hello. If you actually listen to the show, we'd love to meet you. We'd love to hear from you. Like to know more about you. And hey, give me a snippet. Maybe we'll just put you on the show anyway. We'll see.
To ask you what's wrong with you. Why would you listen to the show?
How much free time do you really have? Don't you think you should get a job, or maybe a second job or something? No. We appreciate our listeners very, very much. Both of them.
Absolutely. It actually we're fully around here, but it would actually be really awesome to meet people who listen to the show and like it, because that's why we're doing it.
No doubt. Or even some of the other shows, like you listen to The Hook Rocks by Jay Scott, come down and say hello. We love his show. You like Shout It Out Loudcast like we do. Come to the show. Bring a filet of fish sandwich box if you want to. Ace won't be playing, but it'd still be fun to see you. So we'll segue, I guess, a very poor segue, into the album we want to talk about today. And that's one that's pretty important, I would say, to us, even though it wasn't an album we listened to together, because I don't think I bought it until after we didn't live together anymore. But then I remember after buying it, I listened to it all the time thinking, why didn't I buy this before, And that's Signals by Rush, which is celebrating its 40th, and fellow Pantheon podcaster Hugh Syme did do the cover for this one, as he's done so many. And we can talk a little bit about it because it is one that gets some attention after all these years. But, we can talk about how, we've talked about on the show before, how big Rush is to us, how it's my band. It's one of my top 3 favorite bands all time, how we camped out for tickets to see Roll the Bones together on the sidewalk. Only time we've ever done that. Our shows 7 and 8 were all about Rush. A year after the passing of Neil, we've also done one on Roll the Bones and Cinema Strangiato. But I thought this would be a good one to do because it is turning 40. And it was this is a record that changed things for the band in a big way. This is a huge turning point for Rush in their history and in their evolution of how they made their music.
And I think it's one that kind of gets maybe forgotten about a little bit because they have this giant catalog of albums that people really love. And my problem was in high school, I only knew, Tom Sawyer,
right,
and maybe a little bit off of, 2112 that I'd heard. And I was like, maybe this is not for me. But then, when I started to listen to the entire catalog, I realized how massive the sound was that they could put out and the progression of how they went through. They started off, with more of a rock sound. And then, full disclosure on this one, if you're Mr. or Mrs., I don't like synth Rush, you're not going to like this record. But it is a progression because you figure, you come off making Moving Pictures, which was huge. Then you have Exit Stage Left, which is kind of the in-between live album. But now this is a big, what do we do now? Do we just do Moving Pictures again? That would be easy. It would be a hit. Do it standing on your head, or do you try something new? Do you progress a little farther? And they definitely did on this record.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in reading some research about this, they basically say Moving Pictures kind of fell together. Like it was so simple, like it just happened, and then boom, there it was. Whereas this one, they're trying to push the envelope. They don't want to make Moving Pictures 2, and all three of them, not just Geddy, but all three of them want to push the envelope of technology and finding out, mini Moogs and how all this keyboard stuff can work in here. And so it is a bit of a divider in that, yes, they start to experiment more. That synth sound is right up front. And from the very first notes of Subdivisions you started, it's obvious this is not your father's Rush record. This is a new technological one. And a lot of people who like the old heavy Canadian Zeppelin, yeah, oh, yeah. They miss that a little bit. They're like, nope, this is not for me. A lot of musicians love Rush, but a lot of those same musicians will say, as soon as this happens, this is when I tune out.
And that's too bad. It really is too bad because if you can open yourself up to other sounds, this is a really good record. And I think that you would enjoy it if you could get over that hump of it's not just guitar, bass, drums.
Yeah, it's not 2112. It's not this epic story, about the people who control the galaxy and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have all the storytelling. Well, no, it's got great storytelling.
I was going to say
Neil Peart's an amazing writer, man.
Yeah, there may be. I mean, if you look hard enough, I think there is a theme in here, even though they're telling you it's not really. There is. I think there's definitely a theme, and the songs do go together.
Absolutely. And they always seem to. And they just don't always push it. It's not obvious. It's not in their face. And when they do interviews, they don't always bring it up. It's something you kind of have to piece together yourself and piece together over the years.
Well, and I think that's the big insider joke, I guess, or insider story of Rush fans. Everybody's like, yeah, they don't talk about it a lot. So it's open for interpretation. And you can listen to these things and I know there are interviews where if somebody pokes at them, especially Neil, it's like, yeah, okay, you're right. That's what we were trying to do there. You figured it out, but he's not going to tell you. So it's like, ooh, I know a secret about this. So yeah, it's a very dense record, and there are themes in there if you poke at it hard enough.
And let's kind of examine where Rush are in 1982 when this comes out in September of 82, right? They've just done Moving Pictures, which is like their first number one in Canada. It gets huge in America. Tom Sawyer gets on rock radio everywhere. They do a big tour. They do the Exit Stage Left live album. And it kind of completes the end of their second of their four quadrants of their career, which goes from the 70s to about, 1999 or something like that. They had a system where they would make four studio records, and then they'd make a live album. Right. And they are in order: All the World's a Stage, Exit Stage Left, A Show of Hands, and then Different Stages, which captures them kind of throughout the years. It's fantastic. So they make four studio albums and do that. And it always kind of wrapped up an era, right? All the World's a Stage kind of brought the end of the first era of the band, like where they're just working hard. They're trying to find their sound. They're trying to figure out who they are. They're playing 250 dates a year all over the world, killing themselves. And finally they get 2112. They realize, okay, we can make these epic masterpieces with a story and all that, right? Their second phase, which includes stuff like Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres, Permanent Ways, where they start to get a little poppier with some of those songs. And then, of course, the big one, Moving Pictures. That shows them kind of evolving too, right? We're doing these long ones, but okay, now we may always have a long one like Natural Science, like The Camera Eye, but we're also going to do it in condensed 4.5, 5-minute songs, not just these big old long things. And it doesn't all have to be a 2112, Hemispheres kind of epic thing.
Right.
And then this kicks off, okay, now we are doing synth. We are doing something a little poppier. The songs are shorter, even though for some bands they're still kind of long, but at 43 plus minute record, there's only 8 songs on here. But I mean, most of them are between 4 and 5.5 minutes. Some are a little bit longer, but they're trying to find their way in the pop world and take advantage of this new technology.
Right. And they all are. I mean, even, you got Geddy who plays the synth, but you also have Neil messing around with drum patterns and different ways that he can, activate the cymbals, well, not cymbals, but the programmer pad that he's got to make different sounds. And then you've got Alex messing around with, I know he's got a whole pedal board that he uses. So yeah, all three of them are saying, how do we push the envelope and it's not just pushing it to one person playing the synth.
Right. No, that's right. But it's tough for Alex, right? Because he's usually that middle ground, Geddy's bass voice is up high, the bass and drums are down low. He would fill that mid-range. He would do the solos, right? The songs are based off guitar riffs. And Subdivisions was the first one they kind of built around the keyboard ever. And, he admits that there were some times when he was in the studio like, we need to push the guitar up in this mix. And then Terry Brown, who was their longtime producer, would just kind of smile at him and slide the levers back down. It's like, you're going down in the mix. But Terry, this was basically his last work with them, right? I think he started as an engineer maybe on Fly By Night or something like that. And then he was their producer from Caress of Steel through this one. And I think he just had problems with some of the stuff they did, like the reggae bit that they put into, was it New World Man? Which obviously Neil had picked up from listening to Police. He and Stuart Copeland had this huge mutual admiration society for each other. Yeah. Plus, they're a trio, just like they are. Not having the success that the Police would have, although Moving Pictures was big, but it wasn't as big as Synchronicity, which would come out in 1983, right?
But that shows you what kind of person Lifeson is, too, that he could take that, I don't want to say demotion, but that kind of a step back role, but still be there to do his part, just not so much out in front.
Yeah, that's right. And Neil said he just changed a little bit. He says, really what happened is as soon as Ged's doing keyboard and it's not about bass, then the rhythm section becomes me and Alex working together, and so now we're interacting in a different way on stage that we're used to, and Alex is a pro, so we make it work. But so, yeah, it's a pretty big evolution. It's one that turned a lot of people off, but obviously it helped them gain new fans because people love this album, especially the opening track, Subdivisions.
Right. And I wonder too, you were talking about the album cover and Hugh, how does it even work? Like, do they come to you and say, okay, we want you to work? I mean, you've worked with us before, you know kind of what we want, but we want you to do the new record. Okay. What's it called? Signals. Okay. Well, that's pretty wide open.
Right.
And so I wonder, what was the final concept? Was that the first thing he thought of? Were there several other things that were brought to them? How do you make this one word title into a visual thing that fits into what you're doing? And also, I mean, we've talked about this before, kids going to the record store and flipping through it and say, well, what is this? This is interesting. I want to take a look at it. You put it all together with a dog and a fire hydrant, and that's it. And one word, and boom, there you go. I mean, everything works, but how do you get there?
Yeah, I listened to Q talk about this on their podcast, Music Buzz. I think one day they decided, let's interview Hugh. We've got Hugh. Let's get him on, right? Talk about some of his great work over the years. He said Rush was usually pretty good about giving you a concept and giving you time, especially later in their careers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he I guess they told him about this, obviously working with Neil, and he actually played synth. Hugh, he played on a few different albums, but he played the synth on Witch Hunt on the previous album. So I thought, will he be on the Weapon Fear Part 2 or Part 2 of Fear? But no, he wasn't. He was just quote unquote doing the cover on this one. It's like Signals ahead. It could mean a lot of different things, but I think he picked up on Chemistry, which is the third song on the album.
Yeah.
And that sent a signal to his brains like, okay, yes, then, and it's stark, right? The red fire hydrant, the stark green astroturf grass, the black and white dog. It is a bit of an image. I don't know. And then the back cover, which to me is always just as important to the people who buy the records, it's a blueprint of a Subdivision, right?
Right.
And he said that might have been too subtle and like too cheeky or too above. I'm like, no, those are Subdivisions. That's exactly what you're trying to communicate there. And of course now they're playing with a new technology too in MTV. They're suddenly doing videos for their songs as well, which changes the game. And you can see when they do the Subdivisions video how it can really communicate what they're trying to get through.
Right. I would love to have seen the process of how you start to where you get to everybody's on the same page. I know with moving pictures, it's more of like it's a pun, they're moving pictures and they're moving pictures. Haha. But yeah, it has to be totally different, but capture everything that we want to in one photo. Go. Or one image.
And that's why they're talented people and we're here.
Correct. And we're just talking about them. We can't do our own thing. We can just tell you what we think of yours.
Yeah, it's our own thing. It's just about other people's own things. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, this is Carl Palmer, and you're listening to The Ugly American Werewolf.
All right, so now let's get into it now. Starting with Subdivisions, and let's talk about our understanding of this song. Like you said, you didn't really know Rush in high school. I got into Rush from Presto, which was the album they released, and the first of their fourth quadrant there in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Them ditching the synths and going back to a power trio kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then right after that, they did the double CD Chronicle, which basically took 2 songs off of every album over the years, couple of live tracks, and then, Show Don't Tell from Presto to give you, wasn't just the greatest hits, and there may have been 3 off of Moving Pictures, but it wasn't just the greatest hits, although I would argue that mostly those are their greatest hits, but it was just to kind of showcase the talent of the band over this time, which would have been, about 15, 16 years at the time. Then we meet up in college, and I played for you, and I'm like, I love Rush. You're like, yeah, they got 1 or 2 songs, right? And then you start listening to all these. You're like, there's a lot to it.
Wait a minute. I'm missing the boat here. Yeah, Chronicles is a great. There are no losers on that package. Every time you get a greatest hits CD from anyone, there's always 1 or 2 like, I don't love it all. You love every single track on that from the beginning to the end. Yeah, my only critique of it is that they do have 3 tracks off of Moving Pictures, Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, and YYZ, and they only have 1 track off of Presto, which is Show Don't Tell. And I really love Superconductor, and I thought they should have put. Come on, you can't put 1 more track on there. Come on.
Well, it is a space thing, A.
Yeah.
B, you're talking about the biggest record they ever did and will ever do versus the one that just came out. Like when they made Chronicle, they may not have had a second single out yet, right? So like, okay, put the new one on there. Let's go. Let's ship it. Let's get it out there, kind of thing. So who knows? But Subdivisions is a fan favorite. And they've played it a ton over the years. And when they don't play it, people are a little bummed.
I would be bummed. if I saw them go through the whole show and not play Subdivisions. It's just that riff at the beginning. I guess you could call it a riff. It's a keyboard riff, not a guitar riff, but it acts like the classic guitar riff, and it's instantly recognizable. And it's a great way to start a show, to start an album, but also start a show.
Yeah, man, that heavy.
It can only be one thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then when they go through the first chorus and everything, they come back to it, and it even sounds more powerful. More powerful than it was in the beginning. It's huge, and obviously, it's about growing up, right? And being in high school or thereabouts, almost there.
Right.
And the challenges you face, and like you're in the subdivisions, you're not in the glowing neon of the city because you're not a grown up yet, and you're not in the vast wasteland past the suburbs, right? Which is just like mountains and forests and evil beasts and all that kind of stuff, right?
Whatever they have in Canada, I don't know.
I don't know. No, people in Canada are nice, but even kids in high school in Canada can be a little mean sometimes. So it's hard to kind of get through that whole time in your life. And Neil, I think does a very good job of it in accounting for that. I mean, he says it's just about me kind of thing, but it's universal. I mean, everybody feels
I was
these
going to
things.
say, and this is one of the, well, not this one, but I mean, Rush in general. If you can listen to the song, but if you really go and listen to the lyrics, he doesn't really throw in anything that's just fluff. I mean, this is pretty nasty. Everybody can relate to this. Everybody can relate to being in this. You're trapped in this little box. You have to act a certain way and look a certain way to be accepted. And if you're not, you're a freak and they're going to throw you out. What I'd love to know too is the beginning part. We were talking about the riff. The music is always credited to Lee and Lifeson, right? But that can't be they had to have come up with that riff and then just said a lot of space for Neil because he's going to come in there and he's going to fill this. And it's just the way that he does that at the beginning, adding so much to that intro riff it's amazing to me. So they had to leave the space for him to do his thing. And I can imagine there's the note, like, we do this, Neil does his thing. Mm-hmm. Let's go.
Yeah, because not just that, it's pop, 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 pop.
Right.
He's all over the place, yes. Not to mention writing all the lyrics.
Right.
But, I mean, subdivisions in the high school halls, in the shopping malls, conform or be cast out, in the basement bars, in the backs of cars, And I'm like, that's like...
That's real close to home.
That's real close to home, Yeah. And it's like... And it's also boys and girls, right? Where do they feel pressure? They're in the basement bar, right? They're in the back of a car. And like, well, the senior guy wouldn't have asked me out if he didn't think I was ready for this, right? I was like, yeah, right. I don't know, sweetie. You kind of got to make up your own decision there. I was like, oh, God, I don't want the guys to not think I'm cool, so I'll chug these 4 beers and then just see what happens to me, right? You got to be careful, and it's hard to know who's your friend and who's on your side. You got all these hormones going, and you're making new friends. You're losing lifelong friends. It's like, this is a tough place to be.
It's rough. And, you're saying in the bar, like, especially as a guy, thinking to yourself, like, at least when we were growing up, it was kind of thought that the guy would approach the girl. What do I say? What do I do? I don't know how to be, what's my line going to be? How do I get this done? I'm scared out of my mind that this is not going to work, that she'll reject me. It's a rough time. Not that you ever really figure out how to do it, ladies and gentlemen, but it's very rough at that point in time.
Yeah. Any escape might help soothe the unattractive truth that the suburbs have no charms to soothe the restless dreams of youth. God, I mean, you can't get any closer to home on that one, man. That's just, right. And Geddy using a little range, lit up like a firefly. He could use his whole range on it.
Right.
It's Neil saying Subdivisions, which is pumped in there, which I don't know if Geddy triggers that or if Neil triggers that with one of his things or if that's someone on the board. I don't know. And Alex, look, I mean, he may have stood up to get more guitar in the mix and it didn't go over so well. But I think the solo that he adds here is perfect because it's a lot of keyboard solo and then he comes in and he gets it up high too. So maybe he does 4 bars instead of 8, or 4 instead of 12 that he might usually do in a solo. But it fits in there so well. Iconic song, huge for the band, and timeless as far as, are there kids going to high school this year who don't know what to do? We're going to be put in some of these situations. Yes, there are. It will never end. It will never be a meaningless song. It just kind of depends on how old you are.
Well, and even some of it doesn't really depend on how old you are. I mean, you work in an office and there's cliques in the office and, how do I talk to the boss and how do I get this thing done? And, you always kind of have that 15-year-old you
Yeah,
somewhere in the back that's still, that's still uncertain or unscared or scared of how this is going to work out. I got a big meeting to go to. How is this going to go? You always kind of have that fear. And then to me, the subdivisions, that's always like it's like it's pushing you back down. This is what's happening. You can't get out of this. This is a heavy duty song.
Yeah, and the key, I mean, it's almost ominous. It's heavy keyboard. It's not it's
right.
No, it's heavy duty, right? So I think, I don't know, is this the theme of the man growing up over time? We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's not like he's starting as a baby. He's starting as a teenager.
Right.
And then next song, The Analog Kid, I feel like is kind of more of the same. This is a beautiful song, and I'm pretty sure they played this the tour after we saw. So what was that, Counterparts? I think they played this on Counterparts. And I remember just, wow, man, that was really amazing live. Because after we had Chronicles, and then I had Moving Pictures on Tape, I had Presto, and then we got Roll the Bones,
right?
When we went to see Roll the Bones. And then I guess I decided, okay, I need more Rush discs in my collection. Why don't I go get Signals, because it has Subdivisions, and I love Subdivisions. So the time around making Subdivisions, let's see what else they got. And this was the first one that I kind of fell in love with that I didn't know when I heard it, because I think it's fast paced, but it's also a beautiful song. And if you listen to it, it's kind of that same, God, what do I do? Do I grow up and move on? Do I stay in the womb? Am I a boy? Am I a man? I don't know. What do you think about this one?
I think it's kind of the same, but it's also kind of different, because to me, it's like the kid can be anything. Now, instead of the subdivisions and, you're segmented into this thing, he's lying in the grass thinking, yeah, I can do anything I want, but there's consequences.
Yeah.
If you
what is that thing?
yeah. I've got something here and I know what it is in this place where I am, but I can go and do anything. But if I leave it behind, I'm going to lose touch with friends. I'm going to lose touch with family. I can be successful. What do I do? The world is my oyster. But it is more upbeat. And so I like it. It's a nice change of pace because, when you think about it, Subdivisions, it's kind of a downer. But this is a little more hopeful.
Yeah, no, this is talking about how hard it could be. I'm sorry, Subdivision about how hard it be, how cruel people can be when you're faced with these decisions, and you might get caught in a ticking trap like a rat. You never know.
Yeah.
This is like we're past that now. Now it's the summertime. And I'm thinking, well, I need to go out. I need to go do something in this world. But what will it be? I need to go out and meet people. Should I leave behind my old girl? Should I leave behind mom and dad? And the changes in tempo, because you're right, it's an upbeat, boom, 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 rocking along song. And then they get to like the chorus, you move me, big keys on it, kind of overwhelming, the chorus and everything, changing the mood, changing the tempo. You move me. Before I really understood this song, when I first came to it it's 30 years ago now, 10 years after it came out, but it's 30 years ago. We're saying, you call me. I thought that was a kid whining like, I don't have anybody to call me. Like I'm dreaming about being out in the world, but I'm not. I'm just kind of in my insulated little world of my own. And it was like he was begging or whining, please call me, which wasn't really the case. It was like, this world is calling me. It's calling me. Yeah. I didn't get it back then, but that's the way I took it. So I'm like, well, this is kind of whiny. This is not the tough guy image that I'm cultivating around my metal frame, right?
But how cool is that when you figure that out? Like you listen to it, I don't know how many times, and then the next time, oh, hey, wait a minute.
That's what it means.
And then you go back to, you're a genius, Neil. Thank you.
He is. Yeah. He is. And the last lines are so true for anybody. And it doesn't even have to be a kid leaving house. It could be about a guy who leaves his home in America to go live in England or Europe for years, right? It's
like a crazy person.
Yeah, it's like, when I leave, I don't know what I'm hoping to find. And when I leave, I don't know what I'm leaving behind.
Right.
Yeah. Like you don't know what you got till it's gone, and you don't even know what you're running towards. You just know you're running.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're in the bottom line is that you are going to find great things, but you are going to lose things too. That's the way it works. You can't have it all. You have to accept that. And I think they encapsulate that very well in this song. And Alex does some ass kicking on the solo too.
He really does. He does a good job throughout. That's all him. But look, or is it about a kid falling in love? Is another question. Is this him?
Yeah.
Those first feelings of love, which are
Right.
so powerful when you're that age. Not that you can't be in love when you're 50 or 60 or something like that, or fall in love with someone like that. But those first feelings of love are incredibly powerful and hard to understand.
Right. And hard to deal with. Yeah. I mean, you're up 1,000% 1 second, and then you're rock bottom, and you can't control it.
Right. Whereas, if you're 50, like we are, and you fall in love, with somebody, your friends will be like, oh yeah, that's good for you. And if your parents are still around, it's like, oh, I'm just glad you found love again.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're 14, it's like, I think I'm in love. Oh, Gary's got a girlfriend, and then you got teachers making fun of you, you got the girls making fun of you, you got your buddies you got your parents making fun of you, you got your coach ragging you out in practice. Like, okay, we're breaking up. I don't want to listen to this.
I can't take this.
I don't like this, So that's another thing that makes it hard when you're a kid,
Yeah.
But I think that kind of spills over into chemistry too, because obviously chemistry is about that magic that two people can feel that there really isn't any way to explain it.
Yeah, but when you get there, then I see what they were talking about. Yeah, this one's a little slower, but it still has that kind of rocking undertone to it. And it seems like they've moved the synth a little more in the back on this.
Yeah, Alex is doing some good work. It's kind of Spirit of Radio kind of, riff that he's kind of got on this thing going.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume this is about love between two people. But what's interesting is that Geddy and Alex got to write a little bit of lyrics on this one. It wasn't just music by them, lyrics by Neil. They got to foray into that a little bit. And I think this is the song that kind of sparked the cover idea for Hugh. But yeah, big keyboards in it. But like you say, is it towards the back a little bit in some way? And towards the end, Alex does make some noise and get to do a solo, but that's kind of the way it ends. There's not really that huge middle or 2/3 solo. It's more like at the end, the solo.
And it's interesting too, you're talking about Geddy and Alex writing lyrics. It's interesting that, again, the story of Rush is incredible, that three guys could work together that long and be successful and still be friendly. To have Neil say, hey, if you've got something, throw it in there. That's fine. It's not like, no, this is mine and I only do this and you can't have this part of it. If it works, do it.
Well, they're Canadian, so they're nice people.
I understand that.
Anyway,
that's still a long time. Yeah, Americans would be like, no, this is mine. Get away from me.
Well, I think at that point it hadn't been 10 years because Neil didn't join till 74 or so.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Geddy and Alex had been together a heck of a long time, since they were 12 or 10 or something like that. But, Neil, he didn't join. He's the new guy. Right. Took over for John Rutsey. And so they hadn't been together 10 years yet, but they had logged a lot of miles together and done some amazing stuff together. So I don't like chemistry as much as I like the Analog Kid.
Mm-hmm. But it fits.
It fits.
It definitely fits in. Yeah. And it kind of, I mean, again, there quote unquote is no theme in this record, but I mean, it kind of goes together. I mean, we're talking about, are we picking up stuff from the Analog Kid, the whole, being a teenager, how you're moving through the world, how you interact. I mean, you were talking about being in love, but I mean, chemistry is even with someone that you're not in love with. I mean, can you work with somebody who's not like you? Can you interact with someone, there are people that you like and there are people you don't like. That's just how it works. I mean, and you can't really put your finger on it.
Yeah, no, that's right. And some people say, well, this is obviously about the band because there's a line in there, 1, 2, 3. There's 3 of them. I'm like, yeah, okay, that could be it. Yes, I mean, there could be a lot of things going on. It's amazing to see his song, especially one that's been out this long, that has such a diverse fan as Rush fans are, and to see how the different takes people take on their lyrics. And obviously there's been so much research done into Neil, but he was so private that there's also a heck of a lot of speculation as to what, like if you say, Neil, was this about this, and this, he'd be like, fine, yes, you're right. But he's not going to say, this song is about this, and this. Like he's not just going to offer it. So a lot of people have their speculation about that.
But that's the good part. It's like, I mean, you can listen to Girls at the Dollhouse in Fort Lauderdale. Okay, what are you guys talking
what's
about?
That about?
You're talking about going to strip club. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, in Fort Lauderdale.
In Fort Lauderdale. Did you not get that?
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty specific. It leaves, and that I think that's what he wanted. He wanted to write these lyrics that, I know what they mean to me, but what do they mean to you?
Yeah, and he's super smart. And Geddy and Alex picked up on that. Like, when he first joined the band, it's like, look at the books he reads. Listen to the words he uses in sentences. He's got to be able to write some lyrics. But this also was a changing point for Neil in that besides using some technology, he was always kind of writing fiction. He was writing stuff about the outside world, whereas this one is a lot more personal. I mean, the analog kid subdivisions, that's him.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of a weird deal too once you open that door and you kind of let your feelings out. It's one thing to write a story.
Hey, this is Tom and Zeus from Shout It Out Loudcast, and you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast.
Well, let's move on to Digital Man. Fourth song on the album, last song on side one, if you had the cassette or the LP, Digital Man. This is definitely a lot more techno, a lot of keyboard and stuff in here. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, it sounds very kind of the time there. Is this a metaphor for the modern day man, working hard, working fast?
Yes. And is this the flip side to the analog, the analog kid and then the digital man? Okay. I think that's a little too on the nose for Neil. And I think he would probably tell you that. I think they also got, you were talking about Stuart Copeland before. This is definitely Walking on the Moon from the Police.
With a reggae bit in the middle.
Yeah. There's, you kind of a little bit that's influenced by it. I like that. It's different from what they've done before. This is a big change up. Yeah. And is this, searching for information, getting, bits and pieces from different places? I mean, again, are we talking about here? You're a man in a world, but you're still kind of in the same situation. You don't have all the answers. You're expected to have all the answers, but you don't. So you've got to go to these different places and kind of cobble something together to look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah. And, a lot of different themes in here. It's got a force field and a flexible plan. He's got a date with fate in a black sedan. He plays fast forward for as long as he can. And he won't need a bed. He's a digital man. It's because he's just working. No sleep is necessary for this man. We love to spend the night in Zion. Been a long while in Babylon. Is this, the end of that childhood innocence where you just have to work? You're looking for answers, but you've got no clue. And in this day and age, suddenly there's answering machines. All of a sudden there's starting to be these things called computers that they put on your desks that can kind of connect you all over the world. Neil would freak out, what's happening today as far as, you don't have to work in an office. Everything is beamed in everywhere,
Right. So that's an interesting concept too. So if you were, let's see, 1982, if you were 40 in 1982, coming out of the, the paper pencil world, now you're being, if you were 20, you'd say, and you're just entering the workforce. Okay, this is what we do. We work with computers. We work with, voicemail and everything else. But if you're old school, you're like, whoa. Are you trying to scramble now to, either catch up with this technology or get left behind? I mean, that could be a very scary concept for somebody who was not ready for this.
Yeah, and then there was a story that Geddy told, although his real name is Gary, that basically around this time, and it may have been on Moving Pictures, is a guy who came into the studio whose job was to capture everything digitally. And Geddy's like, hey, you need a hand? He's like, no. Like, he basically brushed everyone off like, I don't need anyone. I know what I'm doing. And he thought, well, the digital man's kind of a jerk, right? So is it about him? I don't know. But I mean, it's obviously part of a bigger theme. And the analog kid and the digital man are a dichotomy of something. I'm just not sure I know what it is.
Right. I like the line too that says he's working under anesthetic, subdivided, and synthetic. Okay, so now are we bringing that theme back in a little bit? You just kind of put that in there. Again, you're telling me that there wasn't really a theme in here, but I kind of think that maybe there is.
Definitely is. And here we are in the 80s, the start of the Reagan era. Where big business is everything, and unions are crushed and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's an interesting place to be, and obviously one when we were 9 or whatever when this came out.
You weren't really going to pick up.
We didn't pick up on that, and we didn't really hear it, the way that I think he did want us to. But yeah, I mean, essentially Terry Brown, who was their engineer and producer for so long, this was the one that really, he's like, I'm not recording this. This is crap. We're not doing this reggae stuff. It's like, oh, okay, Terry, why don't you go just take a little walk there? But,
yeah, go take a break, and we'll see in a minute while we record it.
All right, so that wraps up side one. Side two starts with The Weapon, part two of Fear. Part one, of course, was Witch Hunt, and Neil said, he found it interesting, people ruling or using fear to control people and to make decisions based on that, which has happened in society for thousands and thousands of years. I think look, the Super Neil fans are like, you can listen, you can read everything he's talked about on religion over the years. This is aimed at organized religions, right? This is about, you're using that fear, that lack of knowledge people have against them, but it's the knowledge they will have that will bubble up against you, and that's what you're afraid of, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think too they're talking about, is that the same thing for, you got to figure in 82, this is Reagan, versus the Russians versus, we've got these weapons that can't, like we can't ever use them, because if we do, that'll be the end of the world. So you're afraid of that. And trying to remember back then being a kid. Yeah. I was really afraid of, what was going to happen. The Russians were just this evil empire who every day, apparently, they just thought about killing us. That's what their mission in life was. At least that's what you made me believe.
Yeah. No religion. You're not allowed to, you're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to watch movies or listen to records or own blue jeans, which is ridiculous. To them, it was a symbol of Western fashion, or miners used to wear them because they protected you while you were working. And then somebody, you squeeze those down and it look good on a woman, I don't know. Anyway, but there's so many lyrics in this. He's a little bit afraid of dying, but he's a lot more afraid of your lying. It's attacking those who use these weapons of fear against us, which has to be politicians. And I know for Neil, he's going to burn a saddle over organized religion. Yeah.
And is this person who is so powerful, whether it be the head of the religion or the head of the country, are they living in fear that one day you're going to figure out that this is all smoke and mirrors and then turn the table on them?
Exactly. And I feel like today's politicians, they're basically pandering to people who aren't that bright, and they can kind of keep doing that for a while. Those are the people you can fool all the time, but eventually the people you can't fool all the time are going to hold your feet to the fire,
Well, yeah, and you're talking about what's going on today. Yeah, you're afraid of this thing, this perceived thing. Well, I'm just going to stoke that, this is a problem. This, they're coming for you or whatever it is. Yeah, and so if I do that, then you keep voting for me. So it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, the iron fist and a velvet glove. We have all these weapons, these nukes, to protect us from the Russians. That's why we're safe, And, he's not afraid of your judgment. He knows of horrors worse than your hell. That's the church, right? Judgment, hell. Yes. That's all about that, So this is so well written. And sometimes it's kind of amazing that Geddy can blurt all this out because they do the music and then they fit the lyrics as best they can. Yeah.
And it's kind of a cool thing because it ties the last record and this record together, and then they would move on and do the next one on the next record, Grace Under Pressure. So again,
The Enemy Within, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes. So then it's like, are all the Rush records tied together? I don't know. It's just, they're creating this world that people want to live in.
I agree. It's Neil being, it's part of his philosophy. He cooked up for a long time. And I'm it comes through in a really big way here on this song, how to use these weapons against the people you're supposed to be in charge of. It's interesting and pretty good.
And it's, we were talking about Chronicles before. If you just get Chronicles, you've got Subdivision and I think New World Man are the two off of that. But and they're great, and that's fantastic. But you're missing a lot of content here, like this one. If you don't listen to the whole record. And
this is definitely one you should listen to all the way through. And it's one that when I listen to the last song, I'm upset that it's over. And I often will just say to the Echo, play that whole album again.
Another round.
Yeah, give me another one. But no, you mentioned New World Man. That's the next song, the sixth song, or the second song on the second side. Once again, as we've heard over the years, and maybe it's at this studio, because that's where they were recording this. John Wetton, when they did Alpha, and maybe did they do Asia's first album in this little studio?
They might have. I don't know.
I know they did Alpha. I'm not really sure about Asia, but the fact of the matter, both the hits off both those albums, Don't Cry and Heat of the Moment were both the last songs that they wrote. Like Kolodner came back and said, we need a single. And then they came up with Don't Cry, there in the studio. And it was the same way on this one. They needed to even out the sides on the tapes. Like, we need something else, but it can't be real long. So they come up with New World Man, which is the shortest song on the record. I mean, it's under 4 minutes, if I'm not mistaken here. Yeah, it's 3:42, and it's the only one that's under 4, because in a 43-plus minute record, you're going to have 5 and 6 minute songs. But this is a short one, and biggest hit they ever had charts-wise, which was surprising for me to learn.
Interesting.
I was actually shocked, to be honest with you. Because it's a good song, and it came out at a time, and it had a video, which they played on MTV and stuff. So it's like, okay, New World Man, I get it. But I was shocked to learn that it was, what did it go to? It hit number 21 on the Billboard singles charts. And it hit like 42 in the United Kingdom. Cashbox Top 100, it peaked at 35. But it went all the way to number 1 in Canada. Like, Canada's finally like, okay, no, we do really like these guys. They had a huge success with the last album. New single, and boom, yeah, it goes right up the charts for them. So I was kind of surprised about that. But then I guess I never really understood the content of the song before.
See, I'm going to tell you that, like, back in the Chronicles days, I didn't like this song. I thought it was kind of dumb. I'm like, ugh, moving on. But hearing it in the context of the rest of this record, it's phenomenal, because it's a real, this is a hard right turn from The Weapon.
No doubt. Yeah. It's a little light.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Slower tempo.
It's way more upbeat. And the message in it is very positive. There's this guy, and he's got a big task ahead of him, but he's going to do it. He's gotcha.
Well, we'll see. A lot of people think that this is just a song about the United States of America, right? Like, he's got a problem with his poisons, but he'll find a cure because he can do a lot of things, right? And it's about, he's got to match the beat of the old world man, and that's Europe, and he's got to catch the heat of the third world man, the third world, who need help from him. He's so rich, come and help us, Mr. Superstar, and he's old enough to know what's right, but young enough not to choose it. That's America. They can do amazing things, but sometimes we do stupid stuff. He's noble enough to win the world, but weak enough to lose it. God, that's so poignant. It's right on. So it could be a song about an American, young man who's like, all right, I've got enough. I can do this. I can do great things, but I can also screw it all up, right? So to a lot of people, they think this is obviously about the U.S. And it might be. I can't ask Neil that, but it's certainly about a young American who in 82, the world is at your feet, right? You can do anything, but don't screw it up because you screwed it up before, right?
And you figure, especially in the United States in 1982, we're coming out of the Jimmy Carter era. We're coming out of the gas wars. And we were in kind of bad shape there in the late 70s, early 80s. Now this is the new, you're talking about New World Man, the new world of, Reagan, and everything is great. Everybody's making money. Everybody's successful.
There's MTV. This is fantastic.
Yeah. This is just a new era we're in. And what are you going to do with it? Are you going to make it better, or are you going to screw it all up? And you have the power to do it alone. What are you going to choose?
Right. He's wise enough to win the world, but fool enough to lose it, So we I guess we kind of beat the Russians. Eventually the Soviet Union went away. It seems like the Russians are a bigger problem now than they were during the Gorbachev years, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. But obviously we knew it, but you're right, because I wasn't really reading that subcontext. I too didn't love this song. I'm like, because you get the 2 songs off of this record for Chronicle, Subdivisions, New World Man. I'm like, hey, Subdivisions is one of the best songs they ever did. Yeah. New World Man, he's a new. I just didn't like it. And I'm like,
right.
And the Analog Kid is so much better. I'm like, I'd much rather listen to that one. But I do have a newfound appreciation for it, listening to it now and understanding what it's most likely about.
Right. And how it fits into the rest of this record. And again, coming off of The Weapon, you're like, well, I need a little break. And here you go. This is a little, while the message may be a little rough, the music is a little more upbeat. It kind of soothes you, because next is tough.
Like stuff, but I mean, again, is this about Neil himself? He's finally starting to sing about personal themes and stuff like this. He's about 30 years old. He's not trying to make it anymore. He's gotten the praise as this fantastic rock drummer, winning awards and magazine stuff. He just had a huge album with big tour success. So, what is he going to do now? Is he going to go out and become the world's greatest drummer? Is he going to buy a yacht and sink it off the coast of the Bahamas? What's he going to do? So he's old enough now to have the will and wherewithal to accomplish great things. Or will he just smoke a bunch of, red apple cigarettes and drink his scotch all night? I don't know, And he was probably struggling with that. He's like, okay, I have money, I have fame, I had the stuff that I was working hard for.
Yeah.
So now
how do we keep that desire going? How do we keep that? What did they say at the beginning? They were doing like 200 nights or something in a car even. And then they got to the van, and the van was just a giant upgrade. How do you keep that hunger? How do you keep that fire burning when you've got a giant house that like, wow, I could just go back there and, like you said, drink scotch all night and listen
private
to
jet,
yeah, exactly. Right.
Well,
right.
he didn't, right? He didn't take the jet. He let Geddy and Alex take the jet, and he would jump on his motorcycle with Michael and hit the back road. So that's how he dealt with it, But yeah, so yeah, big single, shocking to me. What was also shocking to me was they said there were 5 singles off this record. I said, no, there weren't. There couldn't have been. But actually, there were. They came out with New World Man. It was their first, and it hit the charts big in Canada, did okay in America. Then Subdivisions came out.
Okay.
New World Man was backed with Vital Signs Live, which was off of, well, it may have been off of Exit Stage Left, but it was originally off of Moving Pictures. Subdivisions was backed with Countdown, which is the last on this.
Yeah.
And it did fine. It hit some of the charts in America, but it really kind of went on to become a huge just fan favorite. But then if you look, after that, they did The Analog Kid it was kind of a promotion signal. I don't know if it really even had a side B or not. But Analog Kid actually got into some kind of chart somewhere. And of course, people like it. And then, allegedly, they released The Weapon. Now, I can't find any information on The Weapon as a single. And then eventually, I think they also released Countdown as some sort of single as well. So 8 songs on the record, and 5 of them were eventually released as singles. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, that is strange, because I had it at 3, which sounds about right for an 8-track record.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Bizarre, But let's get into the 7th song, Losing It, because this is
all right.
This is a pretty special song in the Rush catalog, man, as far as the textures and the sounds and what they're talking about on this. It's not that long of a song. It's not quite 5 minutes. And they do have a guest in here. Ben Mink comes in to play the electric violin, which is haunting on this thing, man.
This song is brutal to listen to, especially after the New World Band. You're like, man, world, and then it's like, okay, you like that? I'm gonna hit you with a 2x4 in the back, because this is it's totally different. It's the synth intro with the cello. It sounds like almost like a classical piece, and then they get into the lyrics of it, and it's just like, oh, I need to lay down. This is tough. It
is, yeah, no, and it's essentially about an old man losing his skills.
Correct.
Can't do what he used to do, and it's sad. You're literally losing it. You're losing your ability to play the guitar. You're losing ability to swing a hammer. You're losing ability to write. I think there's a lot of Ernest Hemingway in there, because eventually they sing "The Bell Tolls for Thee." Bell tolls for thee. That's about him. I also think that there's some more Hemingway kind of scattered around this record a little bit. But I mean, sadder still to watch it die than never to have known it. That's what it's all about. Mac Bornhauser can't play basketball anymore at 50. Well, who cares, right?
Right.
He was never that great of a basketball player. He kind of peaked in high school. He was never really that good. But, to see Michael Jordan or LeBron James, they can't really run, they can't really jump anymore. That's sad. It's sad to see the decline. And Hemingway couldn't deal with it. He couldn't deal with the fact that he couldn't box anymore, or just bed women left and right, or, drink and go to bullfights all day. And eventually, when his ability to write left him, he decided to put
Take
the coda
matters into his own.
put the coda on his own story right there, So
yeah, when they talk about 30 years ago, how the words would flow with passion and precision, but now his mind is dark and dulled by sickness and indecision. Yeah. Oof.
And he stares out the kitchen door where the sun will rise no more. Of course, The Sun Also Rises was one of his big books as well. Some are born to move the world, to live their fantasies, but most of us just dream about the things we'd like to be. It's so true. It's, how many times did I fantasize about being Jimmy Page? But I never really practiced the guitar. Right? So Jimmy not being able to play the guitar anymore, that's sad. Me not being able to play the guitar, who cares? Couldn't play it in the first place,
Yeah.
So what's sadder, me getting older and realize I never was good, or Jimmy getting older and saying I can't be good anymore?
Right. And for somebody like Hemingway, that was his whole life, is like he could just come up with these things, and then you get older and it's like, oh, he's lost a step, and now what am I? Now, can I transition? Like for somebody like Jordan, I can't play pro basketball anymore. I get that, but I can be a businessman. I can be I can be a spokesman. Team, right? Yeah. I can be a mogul. But if you're somebody like Hemingway, like that was your whole life, was these turn of phrases, these grandiose novels that people would read and just weep at how great you were. And now I can't do that anymore. Okay, well, now you're just nothing then.
I think that's what happened to Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer fame, because he was having some physical difficulties and he was having a hard time playing the keys anymore. And he was about to go off on what was going to be his sunset. Okay, this is it, his last tour, I'm saying goodbye.
Yeah.
But he was reading all this online stuff like, don't bother going to see Keith Emerson. He's lost it. He can't do it anymore. He's not himself. And he ended up taking his own life, I think, because of that. And it's like, you're this world-renowned keyboard player, but you physically can't do it anymore. Well, if I'm not that, then I'm nothing. And I hate that. It makes me very sad. That was what happened.
And I know that not in 1982, but later on, Neil did mention the fact that since he would play at such a high level, he never wanted to not do that. Like he was either going to be able to play at 100% or not play at all. Like that was just going to be it. He was going to hang it up. So I wonder if maybe at this point in time, he was kind of thinking ahead a little bit, like there would be a time where he couldn't do this. And, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. And, they quit in 2015 before he had the cancer diagnosis because he's like, that's it. I can't do it anymore. And Alex like, yeah, my hands are getting bad. Let's do one more while we still can. He's like, fine, I'll do it, But then he's like, okay, that's it. I'm out. I'm done. Don't ask again because it's over. Even though Geddy's like, we could. Nope. I'm done. I really am done. And then, of course, his sickness denied us ever having the chance to see him again. But, we roll on then to Countdown. So, all right, so you could say the first 7 songs, there is kind of a theme there about growing up and aging and taking on the problems that you face. Losing, it's obviously towards the end of life. And then Countdown, well, it's about being launched into space. So is that renewed birth? Is that a chance at immortality? I don't know.
Well, now wait a minute. Because they kind of fool you on this one because it's called Countdown, right? You've already had fear. You've already talked about military and what's going on. This sounds very ominous at the beginning. Like, what is this now? Are we talking about nuclear war or what's going to go on here? Then they kind of flip it and no, we're in Florida. We're watching the which one is it, Columbia or whatever, go up and just this hope of what lies out there. What's the next chapter going to be?
Right, yeah, and it's actually something we used to do at school. Being in Central Florida, we would occasionally go down to the pool and watch the space shuttle launch, even though we were, I don't know, maybe 50 miles away or something like that. Once we get up above because it's not like there's any mountains in the way or anything. We're in Florida, so we could see it, all the gas and the exhaust coming out of there and going up the sky. And it was appointment viewing, right? Everybody would come down to the pool or go down to the lake and watch. It was pretty cool to do. And I think they tried it a couple of times. Like they're on tour. They go to Florida, like, okay, we got to scrap it today. So then they got to run them to the airport, fly them to Texas, make sure they get their show. They do another show in another day. It's like, okay, now we're going to come back and check it out. I got to tell you, Or is it, is it a countdown to nuclear war? Is it a countdown to the end of your life? You've already been losing it. So is this now, but mixed with this amazing thing like, well, maybe there is rebirth. Maybe we're going to the stars next. I don't know. I have to admit that I didn't like this for the longest time because I never really liked sampling a whole lot.
Okay.
And you can hear the control tower. You can hear the astronauts talking back and forth. And I just thought it takes away from the song. It's a little gimmicky. You're either covering up music that's not great or you're using it in spaces where you don't have good lyrics, which is rarely the case for Neil. So I don't know. I mean, I get it now, but back in the day, I was like, God, they kind of went out on a dud here. I mean, although the music I think is killer, especially towards the end, but they've got all that noise and samples and people talking. I'm like, that's just unnecessary. It's either a good song without it or, you don't need it. But that was just me.
Yeah, I think if you listen to this track independently, you might not like it. But in the context of everything else, especially the last song where they're going to send you out, I really like this because it's kind of that message. Again, we're leaving one place, we're going to another place. Is it going to be better? What's going to be out there? There's hope in that. And that kind of ties into, again, this entire theme of you're in one place, you think this is everything, but there is somewhere else to go. What is it? What is the hope of the future?
Is it Valhalla? Is it heaven? Is it the afterlife at the end of your life? Or is it just the next step of your life? Who knows? But it's kind of look, it's a little ominous at the beginning. The keyboard is a little ominous, and it kind of goes back to the first song, Subdivisions. It's got a kind of a chug and a charge, but it's not evil. You're right. It's a happy song. It's kind of a positive song. And Super Science Triumphs, that's a positive versus all the religious and the political nonsense, right? Like science is actually coming forward, right? So that's good. Very keyboard first, and then guitar, afterwards. But now it makes more sense. And again, countdown, is that the countdown to the end of your life? Is it countdown to your next life? I think that's what the theme is. It's kind of taking someone from teenage angst and uncertainty through to the end of your life and all the obstacles, all the different things you'll have to encounter along the way. And that's it, right? I mean, Subdivisions, you're in high school. Analog Kid, you're looking to leave home. Chemistry, you're falling in love, right? You're figuring out that stuff. Then you get to Digital Man. Okay, now I'm a working man. I'm out here in society. The Weapon is about how to rule people. New World Man is how do I govern the earth, right? Now I'm at the point where I'm in charge of everything, and then losing it's like now I'm past my prime.
Right.
Now it's starting to fall out, and Countdown is just the countdown to the end. So there's obviously that theme running through it. Pretty amazing record for them, man.
It really is. And I think one of the big problems is that it comes right after Moving Pictures. Right. So again, does this one kind of get brushed? Yeah, they did that one, and then they moved on to other things. This is a great record. This is one that I definitely did not appreciate until I really sat there and listened to the whole thing a couple of times, and you see how it flows one to the other. And I also get the fact that like we talked about at the beginning here, if you're a classic Rush fan, this is where it really starts to get stuck in your craw because they're doing new things. But again, they're moving on to the next phase of their career. Trust me, you don't want them to be putting out the same record over and over and over again. They have to do new.
Yeah, that's part of why I like Rush, because they do have these different eras. And not every one is my favorite. And I got to tell you, although I liked Presto and Roll the Bones, I didn't love Counterparts. And half of Test for Echo I liked, half of it I really didn't. But this kind of starts off, I would call it the most controversial era of Rush, because it really did turn a lot of people off and say, why did you take the Greatest Power Trio and turn them into this synth pop thing? And their next few records, which went Grace Under Pressure in 84, Power Windows in 85, and Hold Your Fire in, I guess it was 87, they became more so, more technology oriented. Although for me, Grace Under Pressure is another fantastic Rush album. And again, starting with Distant Early Warning and ending with Between the Wheels, which to me is the highlight. It's certainly the best song they did after Moving Pictures. I think it may be the best song they've ever done.
Well, we'll get into that on a future episode.
Probably
because
so.
because I mean, I can't imagine not doing Grace Under Pressure, because that's another one that I think is, if you listen to it all the way through, you're going to say that's a way better record than I gave it credit for. So I look forward to that coming soon.
Yeah, coming soon. Maybe on its 40th anniversary, 1984. Maybe between now and then, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's only about 18 or so months away, 19 months. So we'll see. We kind of like to do it around these anniversaries that they have, just because there's a lot of buzz around them. And sometimes you even get like a new issue, right?
Right.
And that's the thing about Rush is, for someone like the Rolling Stones, they might have a whole record's worth of songs that they did during those sessions that either never got finished or whatever. So if they do a Goat's Head Soup 50th, or they do a Tattoo You 40th or something like that, it might have all sorts of cool new stuff on it. Rush is not that way. Rush didn't really have B-sides. They would take the worst song off the record and they would take a live version of something else. And basically, if something wasn't good enough to finish, they just abandoned it. They wouldn't finish it. And so if there's 8 songs on the record, they made 8 songs during that session. That's it. There's no like secret stuff leading. So when they can always remaster it, of course. But what Rush has been doing mostly is now they're putting in live concerts from that era.
Yeah, well, I mean, which is great to hear, but they're always, and that's what I really love though, is that when you get that one track where you're like, why did you not include this? This is fantastic. But yeah, not with them.
But speaking of that, though, I mean, Subdivisions was one that they worked out on the Moving Pictures tour. And they played it live. They didn't just do it during sound check like maybe they did with Chemistry or some of the other songs they were working on at the time. Because that's what bands did. You would write the songs on the road for the next album. And then when you got off the road, then you don't go in the studio empty-handed. You have some stuff to work with. So apparently there's a pretty big trading space among Rush fans to get those kind of bootleg 81 or early 82 shows, because you can get Subdivisions before it was, put on wax, and have early versions of it, which I assume was very similar to the finished product. But I don't know that because I haven't really heard it. So maybe people can send us some, or maybe we can find one of those somewhere.
That would be great to hear. And could you imagine going to that show in 81? Like, okay, Moving Pictures, here we go. But, and then you get this. I've never heard this song before. What is this?
What's all that keyboard in there, man?
Yeah,
it's
right.
Kind of weird. So I put this among my favorites. I mean, we've only the 7 and 8 show 7 and 8 were basically, we were still creating our show. We were kind of creating the foundation, trying to let listeners know this is what we're all about. And Rush was so huge, we had to do a 2-part episode on them, just in general, and our personal experience with them. But we haven't done a whole lot of records. We've really only done Roll the Bones since then. And this would rank ahead of Roll the Bones, obviously.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tough part for me, because Roll the Bones, as we discussed on the show, was kind of like our record because it came out. So no, it's not as good by any stretch of the imagination, but it will always have a special place in my heart for how I got to know it and how that kind of got me into Rush. But yeah, this is a fantastic record, and yes, better than Roll the Bones.
Yeah, well, and Roll the Bones is longer. It has more songs. I think it has like 12 or something like that. And 4 or 5 of them are great. And when they played them live, and look, when you camp out to see a band, you're going to make sure you listen to every song intently, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's what Roll the Bones was for us. It was and not only was it the first show we camped out for, it was my first Rush show, and for me it was like life-changing. Like, I'm never going to miss Rush again. I remember Kel and Spitz were with us, and they were like, yeah, that was great, that was cool. I'm like, I'm glad you guys liked it, but there's no way you liked it as much as I just did. It meant everything to me. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I remember in that show, I think like maybe the second song was Limelight, maybe, and they hadn't done it for a while, and so I didn't know anything about the fact that they hadn't played it. But then when they went into it, the crowd just flipped out. And so that was a really cool experience too. Because I mean, I love the song and it's great, but to hear it with everybody else is fantastic.
I agree. No, I remember second song, Subdivisions, like, they're breaking this out now. I'm like, whoa, that's going to bring the house down. And it really did. I mean, the lights come up, the hands go up. It was big.
When you look at that set list from that show, that 92 Roll the Bones show, it's pretty phenomenal. We got a really good show. We didn't get any weird, like, not weird, but we didn't get any like super deep track filler stuff. It was all pretty much right down the middle, mixed in with the new tracks.
Okay, so now since you said that, although I know we've done this before.
Right, just pull it up. We can refresh the memory here. I thought I will do the same thing here.
Okay, so they have played Orlando quite a bit. It turns out. Say 1992, March 2nd, 1992 at the Orlando Arena. I also saw them March 1st, 1994 so almost 2 years to the date.
Interesting.
I saw them for that, and I remember. Oh wait, it was Limelight was second, man, not Subdivisions.
Yeah. And then they hadn't played that, so when he went into the riff, I thought the place was going to explode.
Yeah. And Force 10 was such a great way to start, too. And I think they stopped doing Force 10 for the most part after this tour. I'm like, God, I love Force 10. Dude.
Yes.
You kidding me? But no, when they did Subdivisions, they did it after Ghost of a Chance, which is off Roll the Bones. And it's a slow, it's a mellow, pretty song, slow song, kind of a ballad-ish. And then they do Subdivisions. And that brings everybody back, right? Maybe you sit down during that one, not during Subdivisions, man. Yeah, it's awesome. Boy, that was a fun night. I mean, Force 10, Limelight, Free Will, Distant Early Warning, Time Stands Still, and then they got into the new ones. Dreamline, Bravado,
which we knew really well. So maybe if you were, Mr. Krusty Rush fan and you're like, man, this is off the new record, whatever. But for us, no, that was awesome.
They fit right in.
Yeah.
And the radio was cooperating. Back then, radio used to play new rock songs by bands. They really don't do that anymore. Of course, they're not making as many as they used to, I guess, but still.
Yeah, but Dreamline, that was the first single. That was all over the radio. They played that just several times a day on the radio in Orlando.
Used to love that. Yeah, I miss the old radio.
Yep.
Yeah, but no, it was 2 years almost to the date afterwards. Third song, they did Dreamline, Spirit of Radio, and third song was Analog Kid, which they broke back out for the first time in a while. I looked at the stats. Since it was released, they've played it at 25% of their shows, which is interesting to me. And obviously, they must have played it a ton on the Signals tour and probably the next couple of tours anyway. It did not show up on A Show of Hands, which is a live album that I went to. It was my go-to Rush album for years. But no, I mean, they mixed it back in. So that's another great thing about Rush is they didn't play Losing It at all because it has an electric violinist and it's just the three of them on stage. But when they did Clockwork Angels and they now have this string section with them, then they could get Jonathan Dinklage, who is Peter Dinklage, famous actor probably most famous from Game of Thrones, his brother, to come out. Obviously, they did the Clockwork Angels stuff with it, but he came out to do Losing It. It's like, we can break this out now for the first time in 40 or 30 years, I guess it was at the time. They have Jonathan Dinklage come out and play that. And I remember hearing it live, like, wow, it's amazing that they broke that back out. But they're not afraid to break stuff back out because it's not like they had number one and top 10 hits. They had hits, but they weren't huge. So that gives them some leeway on what they play.
Right. And then you figure the people that go to that, the last show that I saw, I think it was Clockwork Angels, or it might have been R40. I don't remember, but I do remember seeing guys with like those, I don't know what they call them, like battle jackets, I think, the denim vest with patches on it from all of these different things. I mean, these people were crusty. So yeah, you play Losing It, they're going to know it. It's not like, oh, that's not a hit. Get out of here. It's Absolutely. This was a band that they could pretty much play anything and people would applaud.
And I got to tell you, on that tour, let's see here, it was a Clockwork Angels tour. Yeah, they did break out a lot of those 80s songs, which some people have a problem with, right? It's like, no, you should be doing more 70s stuff, not the 80s stuff, My problem with Clockwork Angels is you should never play more than 4 or maybe 5 songs off the new album. And they almost did the whole thing. They did like 8 or 9 songs. And it's like, obviously I don't know these songs very well because they just came out. But I mean, to start the show, start it with Subdivisions, then Big Money, then bring back Force 10, then bring back Grand Designs, Middletown Dreams, Territories, Analog Kid. They brought The Pass back from Presto, which they say is one of their very, very favorites, So they do all those, and then they go into the huge Clockwork Angels, which is a ton of it. And then they throw in Dreamline and Red Sector A and YYZ and Spirit of Radio and stuff like that. I just, was I glad I got to see it? You bet I was. Was it my favorite show? Not really. Not really. It's just too much new stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. They were talking about that this is a tangent, but they were talking about that Iron Maiden record, A Matter of Life and Death,
Mm-hmm.
which I think celebrated an anniversary. Apparently on that tour, that's all they played. They played that record start to finish and said goodnight.
And
And
that's it,
people
huh?
flipped out. They're like, no, we want to hear the rest. Sorry, this is what we're doing. And so I think there is some of that. You've got to. I understand you're an artist, and I understand that this is what you want to do with your show, but you're playing to an audience who, I mean, they're there to see the high spots too.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Iron Maiden has decided to mix that up. It's like one tour we will do greatest hits, and then the next tour we'll do, there's always going to be a couple of hits they're going to do. They'll always play Iron Maiden, but they maybe put a couple of older ones in there, and then they do mostly newer stuff because they recognize there's a lot of fans who just started to like them during Brave New World and when the band kind of got back together and all the great albums they've made the last 20, 22, 23 years or so. I think they should always have a nice chunk of hits in there. That's just me because their catalog's too rich not to. But because their songs are so long and intricate and they can play 2 hours and only play about 13 songs, right? You don't get 26 songs like you do with the Rolling Stones or Rush. You get like 13 or something like that with Iron Maiden. So they kind of have to do a theme. It either has to be the old stuff or the new stuff a little bit, So I'm still hoping to see them on Legacy of the Beast tour. It just was supposed to happen in America, and then there was COVID, and then I didn't want to go to a festival.
Yeah.
My ticket for here in the Netherlands was at a weird place far away, and I didn't even know if I was going to go there. So it's just bizarre, but and you've never seen him at all, so we got to get you out.
Yeah, we've got to figure that out.
And then, so one Rush like parting shot though for the South Park 25th anniversary.
I just saw that.
Geddy and Alex did get together,
yeah.
and let Matt play the drums for them, and it's the first time they played together in public. I mean, in what, 8 years, 7 years, something like that.
Yeah, and I thought it was a great way to do it because it was a celebration. It wasn't, they were special guests. They didn't even really do a show. They just guested at a show. Mm-hmm. And it's great because, they still have music they want to make. And there are still fans who want to see them play. And so I've watched that a couple times now. It's pretty special.
Of course, Alex has gone on to do Envy and Done. And there's some good songs off that. It's kind of a Canadian super group he's kind of put together. Geddy's been focusing on his big, beautiful book of bass. I think he's going to maybe make a second one. He did donate a lot of his signed baseballs. He's this crazy, like, once he gets into something, he's way into it. He has one of the best autographed baseball collection in the world. I know he donated a big chunk of his Negro Leads collection to the Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool. And he, just tracking down all those, keeping him busy. He's the one who really wanted to go on the most, I think. He's like, let's keep going. We've gotten this to a science. We do it first class. We do it the right way. We make a ton of money, and it's still a rush. No pun intended. I mean, to get in front of our fans, that live concert action, you just can't replicate it with anything else. And they got to the point where they can really pick and choose. They don't have to do back-to-back nights. They don't have to go all over the world because they didn't do Europe that much anymore later in their careers. It's very North American, very Canada and U.S. oriented. So I don't know. I kind of sad for Geddy that he's had to hang it up, but nobody. It's like losing it, man. Nobody beats the clock. There's a time limit for everything, and Father Time is the all-time intergalactic undefeated champion. Nobody beats Father Time. And every band, despite the fact that the Stones are still going, that the Who are in still some kind of form, it all has to come to an end at some point. And that's why we do our show, so it never will for us.
Right. And that's why, and that's too why I like doing this, because I don't want to say forces me, but forces me to go back and listen to these records, but like with a critical ear, like, okay, what are we trying to do? What are you listening for? What's going on? What's really happening in this song, other than just putting it on the car and just driving somewhere?
Like, oh man, I love this too.
Yeah, right, exactly. You're really trying to listen. You're really trying to find patterns in it. So yeah, that is, And with something like this, it's very, there's a lot of layers to it, and it's awesome to peel the onion back and make your own assumptions as to what's going on. Because I looked far and wide for like a Signals interview. Like, did they ever talk about this? And the only stuff that I found was like promo stuff from '82. Like, yeah, we've got a new record. We can't wait to go out on tour.
Right.
I never saw them talk in detail about what's going on, which is maddening because you want more information. But then again, it can be whatever you want it to be when you listen.
Exactly. And check out Music Buzz, because on a recent interview, when they did interview Hugh Syme, they talked a little bit about this record and how he chose the images for it and the photographer that he worked with. Her name's Deborah. And then a lot of other stuff. So obviously he's got a lot of relationships that he can talk about from over the years. And I remember talking about Whitesnake's 1987 logo and how he changed that. And subsequently he worked with a lot of folks in the 90s as well. He's done a lot of great covers over the years. So definitely check out Music Buzz and listen to those guys. Well, that wraps our discussion of Rush's Signals, celebrating its 40th anniversary here in the month of September in 2022. Really amazing album, turning point for the band as far as their sound, as far as the way they recorded, the way they related to each other, the way they related to the world after the big success of Moving Pictures and the ensuing tour, and really set them up for the 80s. Now, a lot of serious Rush fans don't like Rush's 80s stuff, and we talked about that on the show. Personally, I do. I don't love all of it. But once you get into it, it's all very good. It all sounds like Rush. They say Geddy was only doing keyboard. Listen to some of the great bass work he does, not only on this album, but go forward. Go to Grace Under Pressure. Go to Power Windows. Go to the even much maligned Hold Your Fire. There's some sick bass stuff on there. And Alex, of course, was still participating all the while, still delivering some heavy-duty solos, still delivering those textures. It's still Rush. It's just a different era for the band. And that third quadrant, the 80s kind of quadrant, that was very techno, very keyboard influenced, kind of wrapped up that quadrant with the live album of Show of Hands, which is also one of my very, very favorites. This is great. And you can't deny the power of Subdivisions. I'm shocked that New World Man is their highest charting single, both in the US and Canada. I just never thought it was that big for them. And while it was big, I never heard it on the radio. But that's just me. The whole album's fantastic. I really miss Neil Peart now, both for his drumming and for his amazing lyrics. He's a great writer. You can read his books as well. It's not just reading his lyrics. You can read as many books and remember him that way. So as usual, folks, we want to know, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss a point? Did we leave out your favorite part? Hey, you got to let us know. You can email us, uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. Or tweet DM us at ugly_werewolf and at actionjack72. You can check out our YouTube page. You can check out our Instagram page. You can check out our website. Just please download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Doesn't matter if it's Apple, it's Spotify, it's Amazon, it's Good Pods. Anywhere you get your podcast, please download, subscribe. Make sure you get that instant download. It just helps us move up the ranks, which helps us find more rock fans like you. And hey, look, if you're thinking about it, give us a positive review on any of those sites, on any of those services. It just helps us find more rock and roll fans like you. And thanks as always to our partners at Pantheon Podcast, of which we are a proud member, and so proud to be able to offer a VIP experience to Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets during their U.S. tour this fall in September and October. You can check out pantheonpods.com/Nick Mason to check out more of that. And of course, thanks to our sponsors, rarevinyl.com or EIL.com, over 250,000 LPs, CDs, singles, tour programs, whatever you want in stock. And you can use the code podcast to save 10% off not only your first purchase, but all purchases over time. So if you're looking for some rare Rush stuff, whether it's European printed or first edition or just mint pristine condition stuff, go check out rarevinyl.com. And next week we do a little bit of a gear shift. You know, Jackson and I became friends in college in the early to mid 90s, which was the time of grunge in America and around the world, but certainly America. And we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of maybe the best grunge album ever, in Alice in Chains' Dirt, their second full-length album, which featured songs like Wood, Down in a Hole, Angry Chair, Rooster. Huge hits selling millions and millions of copies. But it's not the last thing they did, But it was kind of the peak for Alice in Chains. Drugs took their toll on the band and their members, and we're going to get into all of that next week. So for all you rockers, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We couldn't do the show without all of your support, and we really love to hear from you. Again, send us an email, uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. Let us know what you're up to, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear us talk about here. And to all you rockers all around the world, be cool and stay safe.